Welcome to Just Cook It Radio, hosted by Chef Mario Pareca and Bill Alexander. Just Cook It Radio is about food, life, and everything in between. And now, your hosts of Just Cook It Radio, Mario and Bill.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You are listening to Just Cook It on your local station, 590 Radio, WMBS, and also on FCTV Channel 77 and at justcookit.tv. I am Mario Pareca. I'm here with Bill Alexander. And, Bill, we have a new face in the studio
Yes,
with us
we
today.
do. Yes, we do. We actually have, I don't know if he likes me saying this or not, but a local radio legend in our midst this morning, Mr. Jim Morgan. Good morning, Jim.
Well, thank you, guys. Good morning.
Back in 2009, somebody approached me from a website called pbrtv.com. And it was when I took my talk show from radio to internet. And they were asking me about doing this. And I have the article pulled up in front of me, so I want to make sure. They asked me who were my mentors when it came to radio. And if you will see here, it does say Jim Morgan, WMBS AM, as one of my mentors many, many, many years ago. So it's nice to see you again, Jim.
Bill, nice to see you, as always. I'm glad to have the privilege of working with you two men here today.
And I feel like the luckiest one. I'm sitting with two radio legends.
Well, I'm one in my own mind, thank you. But I'm still trying to get over that pirate loss last night, which was
you and me both. That was a crusher.
Crying in my beer is what I was doing last night. It was a long night.
If you remember, throughout the year, they've had three crushing losses this season. The first one was against the Cardinals when Marte dropped that fly ball in left field in the ninth inning.
Right.
The second one was against San Diego earlier this week when they lost in the ninth. And then last night. One thing I will point out before we move on is after the previous two games, they did win the following day.
Right.
So,
well, the one thing I think we're all having a hard time with in the region is we're not used to having a team get this close and then start losing. I mean, this is baseball. This is going to happen. We're one of the top three teams right now in our division. We have St. Louis, we have Cincinnati, and we have Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati are tied for second. We're not used to this.
No.
We're not used to the magic number. We're not used to this. And it's like really getting stressful again.
And that's why I say, and just enjoy it.
Yes.
Enjoy the moment. Be happy. They've won 88 games so far. And, anything else is really icing on the cake if you want to look at it that way. But, there's still 8 games left. Anything can happen. So
are you going to the game tomorrow?
I'm going tonight and tomorrow, yes. I was there yesterday.
So the parking nightmare you're going to have to deal with tomorrow.
It wasn't bad yesterday, believe it or not.
Well, they're saying the Steeler game tomorrow night.
Well, they're not letting fans park for the Steeler game until like 6 o'clock.
So they're saying the traffic. Now, I was down there last, and I got to bring this up, which is a great transition here. I went to the Pitt game last week, and I was leaving here during the interview that you did with Connor Riley from Misto Box. And I had a wonderful time, really nice. Well, after the interview, you were doing the giveaways of the Misto Box. Well, there was a voice I heard in the radio, and the funny thing is, and I won't embarrass them, but I used to have coffee with that woman almost every Saturday and Sunday morning 20 years ago.
Coffee about coffee.
Coffee about, and we used to, and it was. We sat at the kitchen table and we had coffee, but it was kind of interesting to hear her voice again. So I'd like to shout out hi right now to her and be able to share that. But I thought that was very interesting. I'm driving on 43 going towards Pittsburgh, and I'm going, wait a minute, I know that voice. I know that voice from somewhere.
And you were probably trying to talk back because you're so used to it, and then realized that no one could hear you but yourself.
That's exactly right.
But one thing I want to point out before we get into it here is that we are going to open the lines on the second and third segment, and the numbers to call in if you want to call toll-free. It's 855-590-0590. And again, the station number, if you want to use that one, it's fine as well. It's 724-438-4593. Feel free to give us a call, and we're going to chat. I have a few food news stories that are pretty big that I want to bring up on the top of the show, and then we're going to get into some tailgating, because if you saw my column,
I did see that yesterday
in the Herald Standard that was that ran in the Thursday. Every third Thursday of the month, I do the Just Cook It, which comes with the video at heraldstandard.com, and then the column in the food section. And we talked about tailgating this week.
Which you recorded the video at our friends at 4th Street Barbecue, I saw.
Yes, they're a sponsor of the program. Great barbecue, great ribs. And I actually had some ribs from 4th Street Barbecue yesterday before I went to the game.
Okay.
Which were really, really good, as always. And their mac and cheese, which is really good, as always. So if you want good barbecue, check out 4th Street Barbecue, and that is where we record the videos. They're nice enough to let us use their their kitchen to record the videos for HeraldStandard.com, and the Just Cook It, named after the show, column. And we talked about tailgating. We're going to get into some tailgating later in the show.
What you made, and I know the pictures don't do it justice, looked very interesting.
It's very good. It's one of my favorite recipes. We make it all the time when we tailgate. It's the spicy sausage and 5 cheese dip. Yep. It's got 5 different cheeses in it. I mean, you can argue and say 4 because Velveeta may or may not be a cheese, but it's got 5 cheeses in it, some hot sausage, some red peppers, green peppers, onions, some Cajun seasoning, celery. It's just a really, really good dip that you can actually make the night before, and then you can, I make it the night before, I throw it in the refrigerator, and then you take the crock pot with you, and you plug it. It's not just for tailgating. You can use it whenever you want. You plug it in on the keep warm, give it a half hour to warm up, and you have some great dip that you can use.
Now, one thing I want to, 2 things I want to ask you. The first one is, I haven't been personally witnessed Pittsburgh sports. I've done it through TV and radio and the internet over the last 21, 22 years. So I went to the Pirate game in June, went to my first Pirate game at PNC Park, and I see people tailgating for a Pirate game. Never saw that before when I was a kid. Okay, I go to a Pitt game last week, first game I've ever been to at Heinz Field. I've never seen people tailgating in parking garages before.
Oh, yeah.
That was, I'm looking at, my brother's with me, and I'm going, I have never seen this before. He goes, yeah, they do this all the time.
Yeah, that was one of our favorite things to do, especially when the Steelers played this was about 2 seasons ago.
Right.
Because I go to a lot of Steeler games. It gets really cold out come November, December. And
really?
I believe it or not. And one of the ways that we would beat the cold is, now you can't grill inside a parking garage.
And that's what I saw.
But what we would do, and if you read my column, in the Herald Standard, I talked about one of the things we did was a taco bar. And so we made shrimp, taco meat, which was beef, and chicken, grilled chicken, and we put them in aluminum pans with lids, the kind you can transport. And we took sterno.
That's what I was going to ask you.
So what we did was we'd take tables, and we would take 2 vehicles, and we'd go to one of the top levels of the parking garage, and we'd park in a corner, one car in one spot, the other. So we had that whole corner in between the 2 cars. We'd set up a table with these chafing dishes. We'd wrap foil around the flame so it wasn't an open flame.
Right.
Just to kind of case it in. Put our food in there, get it hot, and we could make tacos. So we had a taco bar.
It sounds like a wonderful idea. Who needs the game? And honestly, just go and eat.
And the great thing about that is when it's cold out and you're in that upper end of the parking garage, it cuts the wind out.
That's
so
true.
It's still cold, but in one game, which was really the game we did the taco bar, we had a car next to us on the other side, and they brought a heater, an electric heater, and they brought this tent with a camping toilet.
Right, okay.
So you didn't even have to go downstairs to use the bathroom. They said, we'll let you use our bathroom if you let us have some of your food. We had plenty of food, so we did a little barter situation there, and it worked out well.
So looking at the video the other day, and I watched it, I guess I watched it yesterday, are you really infatuated with Scoop tortilla chips?
They are. Yeah, I wish they would make organic scoops.
Yeah, of course.
But they're just a nifty little thing that you can use for so many different things. You can use them for, obviously they hold dip really well.
We're friends with Frito-Lay now. You can contact them and ask them to make organic ones.
They're really great because you can even use them for hors d'oeuvres. You make little fillings. You can make little taco bites where you put a little bit of filling inside each one and pass them. You can make little shrimp bites.
Now I know I'm with you every Saturday morning because some of this stuff would have never passed through my mind.
You can do
That's actually a great idea for hors d'oeuvres.
You can do so many different things with them, and they're great. I mean, I wouldn't use them for walking tacos because they're a little big for that sort of thing. That's where Fritos come in really handy. Yeah. But as far as just one bite things or to dip in anything, they're fantastic. Yeah.
Well, speaking of being fantastic, we got to go to break to talk about our fantastic sponsors.
They are
let's
fantastic.
Do that right now.
Yeah, don't touch that radio dial. We will be back with more Just Cook It right after these messages, and we're going to open the phone lines, and we have some interesting things to talk about. And Just Cook It is served up to you today by the Big Barn Country Store and Deli, by Pareca Chiropractic Center, Inc., 4th Street Barbecue, the Herald Standard, and on FCTV by Phil Gianetti Motors.
And you're watching Just Cook It on Fayette TV, Channel 77, and on justcookit.tv, and you're listening to Just Cook It Radio here on your local station, 590 Radio WMBS.
Phil Gianetti Motors at 656 National Pike East in Brownsville is a proud sponsor of programming on FCTV. Phil Gianetti Motors providing quality vehicles for 45 years. If you're looking for a quality pre-owned vehicle, give Phil Gianetti's a call at 724-785-6800 or stop by their website, philgianettimotors.com.
Hello, Fayette TV, and thank you for watching Just Cook It Radio right here on Channel 77. I am Mario Pareca.
And I'm Bill Alexander. If you like what you've seen so far, you can watch the program in its entirety at justcookit.tv for food, life, and everything in between.
Good to have you back. You're listening to Just Cook It on your local station, 590 Radio, WMBS, and also on FCTV Channel 77 at justcookit.tv. I am Mario Pareca. I'm here with Bill Alexander and Jim Morgan. And as we were on break, we were talking. Bill, you had quite the midnight snack the other night that you posted on Facebook. You want to tell us?
It was a rough day, and I was looking for something, so I decided, why not have two people that have been on the program and have both of their things combined together.
Sounds like a good idea.
It sounds like a good idea. If you think of all the people we've talked to over the last year and a month, who could it be? So I pulled out a Shiner Bock. And
Nothing wrong with that.
I pulled out Chobani yogurt.
Yogurt and beer.
Yogurt and beer. It wasn't bad. But again, this goes back to, and I told this story about my father when we were kids. When Girl Scout cookies came out, we would buy Thin Mints. And he would eat Thin Mints and drink beer. I'm going, okay, so that works. I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, and I know people who love chocolate chip cookies and beer.
Yeah.
But then there's some people who are very adamantly opposed to it. It's a very personal thing, I guess.
But the bad thing is, I have one more Shiners left in the refrigerator.
Oh, you're gonna have to make a trip.
I gotta make a run sometime too. Hey, one thing I gotta mention real quick, and not that she's listening to the program, but other people are. Today is my niece's second birthday.
Oh, wow.
Aubrey turns 2 today, so happy birthday to my niece Aubrey,
Yeah,
my
happy birthday, Aubrey.
brother's daughter. So can't be the birthday party today because I got a soccer tournament to go to this afternoon, and then I have a band festival to go to tonight at Laurel Highlands. So.
It's too bad because my favorite parties are for the little kids when they get to dive into the cake like head first.
It's much more entertaining. I'm just hoping the rain holds off. I mean, I was thinking just because they live north of here, and I'm hoping the rain holds off. And I brought the V-Dub this morning.
I saw that.
And I'm going, it can't rain, it can't rain, it can't rain. It's like driving a motorcycle. You don't want to drive it, and then it gets wet.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm still hoping that, one of these days the rule will be waived, and I'll be able to dive head first into cake again.
I don't think anybody should say anything. I mean,
I agree. I think
December
it's too much
1st,
fun.
when we do our 1-year anniversary here at WMBS, maybe we'll have a cake and we'll have you dive into it.
Hey, I'm all for it. And again, the phone lines are open if you want to call and chat with us, anything food related. The number, again, toll free, 855-590-0590, or locally at 724-438-4593. Either one of those numbers will get you to the same place. So give us a buzz. And we touched on tailgating. We're going to get into that again in a minute. But there was a story that came up, Bill, and I know we talk about this occasionally on the show, probably more than occasionally, more on a regular basis. But did you see the new CDC report that came out, the Center for Disease Control?
No.
So they're saying this. We knew this, but now they're coming out and saying that specifically antibiotic resistance is declared a serious health risk in the meat industry. So basically, they said that 30 million pounds of antibiotics were sold for livestock in the U.S. in 2011, which is almost 4 times the amount used by humans. That means that 73% of all antibiotics sold in America go to meat production.
And then the cows eat or take it, and then we get it in return.
And it also says here that the CDC's conservative estimates say more than 2 million people get sick due to resistant bacteria every year, and more than 23,000 people die.
Is that, I mean, I'm wondering now after you say that, if that's one of the reasons why people are building up resistance to antibiotics, because we're eating it on a daily basis in some cases, and that whenever they take what the doctor prescribes to them, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing. It's number one, they're overprescribed to people.
Right.
Because every little thing you go to the doctor, and they want to prescribe you with all kinds of stuff. And now, don't get me wrong. Some medications you do need, in fact,
right, of course.
And some people, there's just no getting around that. But they're just getting a little.
Well, I'm wondering now, and I'm surprised the beef industry hasn't come out with it, that they're going, the beef you're eating will prevent the common cold, the flu, and this, that, and the other thing because of the antibiotics in it.
And now what it says here, what the CDC is proposing, and which I agree with, is they're saying that the use of antibiotics, what they're saying, the guidelines should be that they should only use antibiotics in conjunction with veterinary oversight, and they should only be used to treat infectious diseases, not make the meat bigger.
Right.
Like the steroids and produce more meat, which I 100% agree. You know, almost everything I try to eat is antibiotic-free, grass-fed beef, you know, free-range chickens. It's a scary thing that, you know, and these antibiotics, not only are they in our meat and we're taking them, but they're in our water supply now too, because people are, you know, they're flushing them. You take things and you flush them down the toilet, and where does that water go?
Yeah, it's recycled and comes back.
Exactly.
Now, the one other thing too, and I've been noticing this over the last 15, 16 years, is that kids are developing much quicker.
Yes.
Going through puberty much earlier. And one of the beliefs is because of the food that we're intaking is causing that havoc on our systems that we're able to start that process earlier.
You are what you eat.
I guess,
and, you know,
I guess.
so when animals take steroids or antibiotics or anything like that, and then we eat them, as you said, they're going into our bodies as well. So it's a scary thing. Yes, Jim?
We have a phone call. I didn't know.
Great.
I didn't know I was supposed to say
You're
that.
allowed to talk.
You're allowed to talk.
This is a free, open forum for everyone.
Oh, all right.
Let's go ahead and take the call.
Well, we'll put the caller on the air like this. Hi.
Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine. How are you doing today?
Took some pain pills, killed this pain in my back, my sciatic. I had an operation, but it didn't work, so that's what you have to live off of, a pain pill. I wanted to ask you something.
Okay.
Okay? I raised chickens for years, okay? And mine are open range. You know, they're young now, you know, from hatching and stuff.
Right.
You butch at 6 months, okay? They're always tough. Now, just listen to me, okay? I go out to the Fayette County Fair every third Sunday of the month. It's buy-sell trade. People enjoy it, you know, animals.
Right.
There is a Chinese man and his wife out there every time for years. He goes around in his little truck. He buys every rooster he can get almost real cheap, free.
Okay.
Now, I jumped him. It was this month, last Sunday, I think. Okay, he don't talk much, don't say much. He said I asked him, because he'll buy old chickens, anything. And I asked him, okay, what do you use to tenderize the meat, even though they're almost, you know, like rubber?
Right.
Because, you know, when I did a bunch of roosters, you know, White Rocks, even at 6 months, they were still tough, you know. So some kind of spice or something, maybe. I think it started with a C or an S. How I figure maybe you'd know something. How would you tenderize?
So how do you tenderize tough chicken?
There's a couple different ways. First of all, the method of cooking
Right.
can tenderize, because what makes meat tough, whether it's chicken, whether it's beef, it's how often they use the muscle tissue. That's why veal's so tender, because veal doesn't use their muscles as much. And that's why a tenderloin on the cow is the most tender cut of meat, because it's a very, very seldom used muscle.
Okay.
The more the muscle's used, the tougher it's going to be. The more connective tissue, the tougher it's going to be. So roosters are generally older. They're males. They use a lot more muscle tissue, so they're tougher. Now, you can cook them in different cooking methods, such as braising. Will break down that connective and muscle tissue and make it more tender. As far as tenderizing goes, you can do scallopini as a way of getting around that toughness, slicing it thin, pounding it out.
Right.
Is a way to do that. And when you marinate it, you can marinate tougher meats in, like, acidity, and that'll break down that connective tissue and tenderize the meat.
What do you mean by
like,
acidity? With
like
vinegar?
Red wine, balsamic vinegar, things of that nature will get in there and really tenderize. So one of the classic rooster dishes is something we've talked about, coq au vin.
Yes, we talked about it a few months ago.
Yes, it's traditionally, I mean, people use chicken nowadays, but traditionally it's rooster, and it's braised in red wine. So you have that acidity from the red wine, and you have that cooking method of low and slow, and it cooks for a long period of time on lower heat, and it tenderizes that meat. So those are a couple different ways you can get around that. And also, believe it or not, if you cut it in smaller pieces, you have to take it off the bone, cut it in smaller pieces and deep fry it, such as in a General Tso's chicken or something of that nature. It'll make it. If you look at, like, alligator meat's very tough, but you can have, when you eat it, 9 times out of 10 it's fried, alligator fingers,
Never
you
thought
know,
of that.
things like that. It kind of cuts down on that toughness. It makes
And the same thing with frog legs, too. That would be very tough, and they're usually fried or done that way also.
It's those muscles that are used a lot.
And rabbit. You know what? Now this is all making sense to me, why you see some of these fried more than you do don't.
Yeah.
No, it's because it breaks it down.
Rabbit stew.
Yeah.
Braised rabbits, very traditional. We used to make rabbit croquettes where you would braise the meat for a long period of time, pick it off of the bone, and then cook that with some heavy cream, some flour to bind it, some cheese, roll it into balls and deep fry it.
Okay.
So, I mean, those are all different ways you can get around that toughness.
Sounds
Now,
good.
the thing about rooster, too, you have to remember is not only is it a little tough, but it's gamier than chicken. The flavor is a little gamier.
Because it's older?
Because it's older, yeah. And so, and mostly roosters are wild. You don't see a lot of roosters that are commercially brought up like chickens. Because when you feed, depending on their feed and the way that they're controlled, you can kind of control their flavor.
Okay.
So, roosters are a little gamier, and that's something that you have to take in consideration when cooking. That long and low and slow cooking will kind of
So in other words,
gaminess.
This gentleman that's buying these roosters that most people would not buy is getting a great deal on it because he's able to prepare it and actually make good meals out of it, just like what we just said.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you can definitely make good tasting, hearty meals from rooster. You just have to know how to cook it and how to prepare it.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can't prepare it the same way you do chicken.
Right, you can't. I wouldn't recommend roasting a rooster whole like you would a chicken. It just wouldn't be as good. It would be tougher. It'd be gamier.
And it's really hard to say, too. Say it 3 times fast. So,
yeah, very true.
Well, caller, thank you very much for giving us a call today. We appreciate it.
Okay, what does braising mean again?
Braising is a cooking method. It's much like one of your standard cooking methods. So you have like sautéing, grilling, roasting. Braising is the same thing. It's one of those methods, and it's traditionally low and slow. So when you braise something, you take a really flavorful stock, and you'll put your meat in your stock. Traditionally, you'll sear it first so it has that crispy outside, and then you'll put stock about halfway up the protein.
So you're talking about a chicken or a stock
chicken,
or a chicken broth?
Chicken,
okay.
And then you can put vegetables in it too. So you have veggies in there that'll kind of fortify the flavor and also give you some vegetables. And then you cover your pot or your pan, and you can either braise on the stove or in the oven. I prefer in the oven just because the temperature is easier to control. So you'll put it in the oven at like 275, around there, 275 degrees, and just let it go for 4 to 6 hours, real low, real slow till it falls off the bone.
Could you do this in a crock pot?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
because
sure.
To me that would actually sound easier because you'd put it in. Of course, you would sauté it on both sides first, then put it in, then put your stock in, put your vegetables in, and in a lot of ways, I mean, it's like making a roast basically.
Yeah.
As you'd be doing.
Pot roast is
yeah,
braised.
Yeah,
That's something you braise.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
And
I
then
would have never thought of that.
It shreds. It comes right off the bone. And another technique or method that's very similar to braising is confitting, which is a French technique.
Never heard of that one before.
The difference is when you confit something, you do it in the animal's own fat instead of a stock. So duck confit, duck legs, very traditional cooking method, French cooking method. Same thing, low and slow, but you cook them in duck fat, and then you preserve them in duck fat. You hold them in that instead of stock.
Cool.
So just different cooking methods.
Well, we hope we answered some of your questions this morning. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, because I got a ton of them in my freezer, because when I did mine, a lot of them, I cut the leg and thigh off together, and then I'll take the breasts off, and then I put them in a freezer bag, and it's them type that you just suck the air out.
Right.
That way they don't get freezer burned.
Right, that's the best way to store
them. Do something this week. Make one this week and try what Mario said, and then let us know how it turned out.
You'll be on next weekend?
It will be here.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
So, interesting. I would have never thought about doing that with rooster.
And chicken thighs are another thing that are very commonly braised.
Yes.
We used to, like Thai food, Thai cuisine, they'll braise chicken thighs in like coconut milk, curry paste, things like that. It gives it's actually really, really good.
If I like coconut milk, it'd probably be a good thing.
Yeah, well,
I don't like coconut milk.
But, yeah, so those are it's a different. Braising's actually one of my favorite cooking methods. I mean, and like you said, you hit the nail on the head. Pot roast is one of the most classic, traditionally braised
My
foods.
wife makes one that falls off. I mean, literally, when you take it out of the crock pot, and it falls off. And my favorite part of a roast is the meat itself, but the little potatoes are in there that cooks in the juices and everything else. Pull those out in the place, mash them with a fork, put a little bit of butter on it, and it's heaven. I mean, that's the way you eat them.
Yeah, we used to do a braised pork belly, which was just off the charts because And we were playing with that a few weeks back at 4th Street Barbecue.
Oh, really?
I do menu development with them, and again, one of our sponsors. And we were doing some braised pork belly. We were smoking it a little bit and braising it, and trying some different techniques with that. And it's just really good.
The other thing, and thinking about roasts, when we talk about putting vegetables in roast, usually put potatoes, carrots, onions. My wife, and I never had this, but her coming from a English family, parsnips.
Oh yeah, I love parsnips.
And I've never had until 16, 17 years ago. I never had a parsnip until we got married or started dating. And I mean, they're wonderful.
Oh, parsnips are great. They're great in soups.
And they're underrated.
Oh, very. They're great in soups. They're great in stocks. They're great. They're great roasted. They're great in mashed potatoes.
I was just going to say that. That was something else that surprised me. Someone said they put one or two in their mashed potatoes.
Yeah, and we used to do a parsnip and sweet potato puree.
Oh, sounds good.
And it was really, because those two flavors, for whatever reason, they just go together really well. And the way we used to do it, I mean, this is a little, you're not going to do it like this at home. This is a little upscale, but we would take piping bags and pipe our mashed potatoes on a plate. So what we would do is we'd put parsnip puree in one bag, sweet potato puree in the other, and we'd put both of those piping bags in a bigger piping bag and pipe them onto the plate.
So you'd have two different colors on the plate.
It almost looked like a twisty ice cream cone, but it was half orange and half white.
Have you noticed everything comes back to the twisty ice cream cone?
I love twisty cones. And I was going to have a twisty cone at the game yesterday, and I didn't want to leave my seat, so I thought, you know what, on the way home I'll grab one. And after the way that game ended, I just didn't even want one. It just turned my stomach and didn't get my ice cream, so I'm hoping tonight.
You'll get your ice cream tonight.
I'm hoping.
Hopefully that's the thing that will turn them around so they can win it this evening.
Yes, I'm hoping there's a reason. Now, Bill, the other big thing going on in food this week that I saw, and I actually saw this on one of the evening news programs.
Right.
And it got me into looking into it a little further, and lo and behold, it was one of the top stories on a lot of blogs and websites.
Okay.
The NRDC, which is the National Resources Defense Council, just published a new report about food expiration dates.
Oh, I saw that, yes.
And they're talking about food being wasted.
Because people are getting confused not by the expiration but the use-by date.
Right.
And that's not the same thing.
No, well, not even that. There's no restrictions on dates that are on. Right. Sometimes it doesn't even say. There's just a date on the package.
Right.
Now, what people need to understand is that date isn't a holy word. It's not like something you have to really focus on. The date is there for a couple of reasons. Most of the time, it's there to tell you when that food is at its peak flavor.
Right.
And a lot of times, it's there just for rotation purposes in the supermarket, so they know which foods to put up front. There's a term in the food industry called FIFO. FIFO, first in, first out. So whatever you get in first, obviously the older stuff you use first, and then you rotate. It just makes sense, common sense. So those dates help the supermarkets.
That's why when most people, if you buy milk or eggs, they're going in the back of the rack to get it instead of buying what's up front.
Right. So the supermarkets use those dates.
I love that. I just used hand signals when we're on the radio. This doesn't make
Well, it's on FCTV as well.
Okay.
But a lot of people, if you get your milk, if they see that date, if that date is today, they'll throw the whole carton of milk out.
I know that.
And that's really a waste.
Yes.
And they're talking about food waste here, and it's a big thing. And another thing people need to realize, now I was watching interviews that they did with people on these television programs, these news shows. And one of the ladies that struck me said that, well, if the manufacturer has the date on there, it's there for a good reason. I trust them. Well, here's the deal. I don't.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this too. Manufacturers, large food companies, when it comes down to it, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but they don't care about you.
No.
They care about selling their product.
And making money.
Right. So that date that's on there, they're not saying, oh, please don't eat it after this date. It may hurt you.
Well, I talked to, and this brings up the whole milk thing. This was a handful of years ago. I was at something with Bill Jackson, and I told Bill, who owns Jackson Farms, I said, this is a dumb question. I mean, honestly, I'm so old, I should know this. But that date on the milk, if the milk wasn't opened, do I get rid of that milk on that day? And he goes, no. As long as it was sealed and refrigerated, you still have at least another 7 days after that, because, again, that's a rotation date. That's not really So,
right.
Again, it's just one of those interesting things, and I talked about, like you said, it was about 2 years ago.
And unless there's something out there that I don't know about that's been very well hidden from me, these dairy companies and these other companies that put these dates on there, they don't have crystal balls.
No, they don't.
that tell them exactly when this food is
And I've had milk,
be consumed.
I've had milk from multiple manufacturers or dairies that before the sell-by date, the milk goes sour.
Sometimes.
So, again, I mean, just use your common sense,
Right.
smell it, taste a little bit of it before you give it to anybody or before you use it in cooking. And then if you're making sugar cookies and you use sour milk, go ahead. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, but it's just and what the NRDC is trying to get to, and they published this big study, which is actually called the dating game, how confusing food date labels lead to food waste in America. So it's more of a waste thing than anything, but just something to keep in mind, something to look at, because food waste is a problem.
Right.
We produce way too much of it to begin with, and then we're wasting what we produce.
Well, and I gave you that article this week about the food company saying that they're producing the food to feed the world.
Yeah.
And I shared that with you, and you gave me a rant back.
Yeah, that's
about if that was the case, why are there so many starving people in the world?
Yeah, there's billions of starving people in the world, but we're making enough food to feed the world. Give me a break.
They probably are making enough food.
Oh, they're making enough. They're just not doing it.
They're not distributing it properly.
And they're not making, and they're not really growing it properly. To be honest, they're growing way too much corn, way too much soybeans, and they're all GMO. So
now,
what good is it?
But again, the whole idea with the corn, is that because we're trying to use it as an alternative fuel source now? And because all the corn's coming from the same place, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
There's corn that goes into my car, and there's corn that goes into my body.
Well, it's because it's very cheap to grow, and they have it altered in such a way that they have it patented. So they have their own patented seeds. So the more seed they sell, and the more seed they force farmers to buy, the more money they make.
Right.
So, and it's the same company that buys the weed killer and or makes the weed killer and the pesticide. So they're got a twofer.
Monsanto?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. You said it. So they have a whole monopoly on the industry, and they're creating all this GMO corn that we don't know what it does to us.
Right.
They're feeding it to the animals too, that we don't know what that does to us. And they're making a lot of money.
Of course.
And the lobbyists are right on Capitol Hill in Washington.
They're making it too. Hey, we got to take a break.
Let's take one.
And get ready to do our third part of the show today.
Okay, and again, you can call in anytime. I'll give the numbers when we come back. Don't touch that radio dial. You're listening to Just Cook It, and we are served up to you today by the Big Barn Country Store and Deli, by Pareca Chiropractic Center, Inc., by 4th Street Barbecue, and by the Herald Standard.
And you're watching Just Cook It on Fayette TV, Channel 77, and also at JustCookIt.tv. And you're listening to Just Cook It Radio here on your local station, 590 Radio WMBS.
Welcome back. You're listening to Just Cook It on your local station, 590 Radio WMBS, and also on FCTV Channel 77 and at JustCookIt.tv. I am Mario Pareca here with Bill Alexander and Jim Morgan. And again, the numbers if you want to call us during this third segment, 855-590-0590 is the toll-free number, and locally it's 724-438-4593. And
now I'm hungry for Chinese food. Thank you.
A lot of rooster and chicken talk. There's one other story I want to bring up, and then I want to get into some tailgating for about the last 10 minutes of the program. So the reason this caught my eye is because what we talked about in the past, Bill, about the kids in restaurants were not letting kids go in.
Yes.
So recently, a family was kicked out of a Texas Applebee's because of their kids' active, and I say that with air quotes, behavior.
It's radio.
So, I just said with air quotes. But with active behavior. So there was a family had a 3-year-old child and a 1-year-old child. They were both boys. And I guess they were being a little loud or active at an Applebee's.
Right.
So not only, and this is the kicker, not only did the manager kick them out of the restaurant, but he also called the police.
What were they doing?
Just being active, and that was the whole thing. And so the police came. Now, it says in the article that they gave the family a warning for disorderly conduct. But then the police came back on that and said they didn't give them, they just handed them a slip of paper that said, this is why we talked to you, just so they had a written report of the incident. And then the Applebee's said later, Applebee's reached out to the family.
I hope so.
Corporate reached out to the family and offered to comp their meal. Well, they didn't get a meal there, but to give them a free meal.
Right.
But the family politely declined, said no, thank you. We're taking our business elsewhere. But that just blew my mind.
What gets me is I have, and if you don't know by now, audience, I have 3 kids. I have a 13-year-old boy, a 9-year-old boy, and a 6-year-old girl. The princess never causes any problems anywhere. The 2 boys, when they were younger, we were pulling our hair out. But again, it all has to do with service and how we're being treated and how the kids are being treated. And I told you this before. I'm not afraid to tip anybody a very good tip if they cater to the kids. And a lot of wait staff knows that if they make the kids happy, who else is happy?
Oh, yeah.
Mom and Dad.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've gone to Red Lobsters. I've gone to Olive Gardens. I've gone to these places, and we've had excellent service. And the kids have been wonderful. Now I don't have to worry about it because they're older, but when they were younger. But I've also been to places where service was awful, and the kids were just out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And I've walked out of restaurants too, not because of the kids being out of control. And there would be times that either my wife or I would be having dinner by ourselves with one of the other kids while we took the other one out that was causing problems.
Yeah, well, it's one thing if you take your own kids
Right.
out, but to have the manager kick you out and then call the police on top of it, give me a break.
I think that's a little bit nervy.
Yeah,
I mean, there's restaurant police now.
Yeah,
come
and
in, handcuff
please,
the kids.
The kids weren't like 16 and 19.
Well,
They're 3 and 1. You
were
know
they
what I mean?
throwing food at each other?
It doesn't really say. It just says that they were being active. So
Were
I
they
guess
climbing over booths?
Probably.
I mean, what were they doing?
That would be my guess. They were probably being loud and running around a little bit and such. But
I was at an Eaton Park. This was years ago.
Oh, here it says. I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. But the oldest boy wandered away from the table, prompting his father to grab him. And as doing so, the manager approached them, claiming the children were making too much noise.
I was at Eaton Park years ago, and this was before Sarah was born, and it was just the two boys. And we were there, and it was confusing. It was because, again, service wasn't great. And some woman came up to me, and she looked at me and my wife, and she said, "It will get better." And I go, "Huh?" She goes, "I have two boys. They're 20 and 25. It will get better." And from that point on, I'm going, "You're right, it will." And again, we've all been through it in some way, shape, or form. It's just now, are people becoming more sensitive, or are more people complaining about it? I don't know.
I think it's because we have the internet and we have such a news at our fingertips that this stuff is
Or we have no news at our fingertips.
Well,
and we're creating news. It's like the guy that in Pittsburgh, the college student that walked into the store dressed as Spider-Man, made national news this morning because he went in, asked them how much money they had, turned around and left, and they arrested him for trying to rob the place. I'm going,
well,
it was interesting in Pittsburgh for a day and a half, but it made national news this morning.
Yeah, again, just stuff like that. But I'm sure this stuff has happened in the past but hasn't gotten the recognition.
I'm
but
sure.
In any case, I don't agree with that. I think kids
are kids.
You got to be aware of that. But anyway, let's get on to a little bit of tailgating stuff here before we sign off this week, just because I want to touch on this. So let's talk about Tailgating 101, the basics. I love to tailgate. It's one of my favorite things to do. And the thing that I like to tell people is you don't need a game to tailgate. You can do it. Tailgating technically is just having having food and beverage out of the trunk of your car at the back of your car.
Let's go to the supermarket parking lot. Hey, we're going to have a party here.
You can do it in your driveway if you wanted to.
I have been to car cruises and car shows recently that they do that. And again, you're right. All it has to do is it's a group of people getting together with good food that's portable.
Yeah. I'll never forget when I was young, my sister used to do dance recitals. She used to have dance lessons and do recitals.
You did tailgating outside of dance
those recitals were some of the longest. And I was probably, at the time, 16 years old.
Oh, yeah, they're awful.
And I had to be there. I was 14 through 16-ish, and I had to be there. And it just was, I was bored out of my mind. I didn't enjoy it. I'm sorry, but I'm being honest, I didn't. And so at the intermissions, we would have a tailgate. We would have little meat and cheese trays, fruit and vegetable trays, a cooler of beer and soda, so the adults would get beer. I would try to sneak a beer, but could never get a hold of one.
So you guys were getting crocked in the parking lot.
Well, I didn't say getting crocked,
I mean, I used to MC a local dance studio in the Brownsville area up until a couple of years ago, and they were long and drawn out. I mean, they were. I could see having a tailgate to alleviate that stress and tension. Yeah.
Yeah, but.
And beer at a dance recital.
Yeah, so that's, you can tailgate anywhere.
I'm going to bring that up in June when my daughter has hers. Going, honey, I'm taking a few with me.
Nowadays, you may not be able to do that.
That's true, too.
That was
open container
a little over 10 years ago, but... And now a lot of dance recitals are at like high schools.
Right.
This was at like just a center, so it wasn't at like a high school parking lot. 'Cause you're not allowed to take alcohol on high school grounds, so that wasn't the case. But we didn't do anything illegal, but it was fun. So you can do that.
Statute of limitations over around now, right?
So I hope so. So here's first I'm going to be extradited back to Canada, and then this. So that's the things I say on the radio. Tailgating 101 now from tailgating.com. Here's 10 things you need to do when you tailgate. They're not all food related. I'll give my commentary on them as we go through them very quickly. Number 1, dress in your team colors. Absolutely,
Well,
I
of
agree with
course.
that. You have to represent. Number 2, plan your menu. Now, that's very important because you need to bring your stuff or your food to the game, number 1, properly on ice. When your cooler, that's
Right.
why I say when you bring ice, it's not just to keep your drinks cool. The proper way to pack a cooler is to put your cans and bottles on the bottom. That way it weighs it down. Put a layer of ice in between, and then put your food in another layer of ice. And have your burgers portioned out. Have your toppings already cut in Ziploc
Right.
bags. If you're going to do hot sausage, have your peppers and onions already cooked and chilled, and then you just reheat them on the grill. Things like that. Make what you can ahead of time because when you get in the parking lot, you have less resources to work with.
Right.
So do as much as you can before you leave the house or the night before, preferably. Number 3, make a list of your items you're taking along. Very important. So you have everything organized, everything written out down to the. You don't forget anything because I like to do that at the beginning of the week, like 4, 5, 6 days ahead of time because you never know what you're going to forget if you're running around last minute. Plan to arrive 3 to 4 hours early. That's a given because you need some time to set up, some time to break down. Find a good spot to park. Very important. That's why you get there early. Fly a flag. I never did that, but that's a good idea to have either a flag or a balloon so your friends can find you in the parking lot. Meet your tailgate neighbors. Like I said, you can barter back and forth because usually they have something you don't.
Or something you forgot.
One thing that happened that was really funny, I was at the AFC Championship game tailgating one year for the Steelers, and they had the later game, so the NFC game was first.
Right.
We brought a TV to watch the NFC game in the parking lot, but we didn't have an antenna. Lo and behold, my one buddy just wandering through the lot. Someone else had an antenna and no TV. So we got together and we got to watch the game. Food should be ready. Absolutely. You get there, you get it all ready. And we used to do breakfast first. So when we get there, we'd make eggs, bacon, hash browns, sausage, pancakes on the grill. And they even make the pancake batter that comes in tubes now. Yeah. It's almost like whipped cream. Right. But it comes in, they even make organic pancake batter that comes that way. You can spray it right on your griddle. Game over. You don't even have to mix anything. Leave your area clean is the final note. And that's, make sure you clean up at the end. And you can even go out and tailgate at the end of the game to beat the traffic while you clean up, have another burger.
Right, exactly. And good luck to those tomorrow night since you got the Pirates playing in the afternoon. And, I mean, you're going to have a shortened tailgate window tomorrow night.
I don't think we're going to tailgate tomorrow. It's Sunday. It's afternoon game. But, we'll probably have a couple.
So did you get tickets to the Steeler game too, so you can make a whole day of it?
I'm not going to go to the Steeler game tomorrow. I'll watch it on TV.
Well, I wish I would have thought of it last weekend because we saw Pitt play in the afternoon, and I forgot the Pirates were playing that evening, and we were talking about making a day of it because that was a good game last Saturday.
Yeah, I got to pace myself after the emotional drainage I went through last night. I don't know if I can handle that twice come Sunday, but. Bill, it was a great show this week.
Always is.
We'll be back next week with more Just Cook It right here on WMBS. And please check us out.
Real quick, mention this. Coming up in 2 weeks, we're going to be somewhere.
Yes, we're going to be at the Heart Walk.
That's right.
So be sure to tune in that day and same time.
Yeah, we're just going to be on location instead of in studio.
At the Heart Walk. We'll give more information about that next week, but just make sure you mark your calendars for that. And check us out online at justcookit.net. That is our website. You can get all our social media, podcast, everything. All our sponsors' info and everything from there. But we will be back 9 a.m. next week right here on WMBS. For Bill Alexander and Jim Morgan, I'm Mario Parecka. Always remember to just cook it, and we'll talk to you next week.
You have been listening to Just Cook It Radio with Mario Parecka and Bill Alexander. For more information on this program and how to download it as a podcast, go to justcookitradio.com. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please call us at 1-855-590-0590.
This has been a $1 Million Baby production.